Giselle, how are you feeling today?
Hi. Very well, very well. It's a start to the week, a good Monday, a productive Monday. I had a good weekend.
Nice.
So, yes, we don't complain. Summer is always a nice season.
It is. And I remember that when we initially scheduled our podcast, your son was in the midst of the exams. Now it's a bit of a fresh start to the summer, so that's always a
Exactly.
pleasant. Do you have any plans for the summer?
Nothing concrete. Bit of traveling, but at the end of summer. But
Okay.
I think it's just enjoying the Maltese summer.
Okay.
Some nice fruit and going out and going swimming and just enjoying what Malta has to offer during the summer months.
In Malta, there's always something to offer in the summer
Exactly.
months. But
And the festi, we cannot forget those.
are you a fan? You're a fan?
Not a huge fan, but there are some that are nice, the smaller ones especially.
All right. There's always a nice atmosphere around them because it feels like a community-like of event.
Exactly.
So I get that feeling. I'm not a big fan, but I appreciate the community feeling.
Exactly.
Feeling to it.
Yes, agreed.
Giselle, first of all, thank you for reaching out to me and to be here. So thank you for joining me in the GROWTHSchema podcast.
Thank you.
And this will be, I think, the 46th episode or so.
Okay.
So nearing the 50th mark, which is
Fantastic.
I'm looking forward to that milestone now. What about Zaar?
Well, Zaar is reaching its 10-year anniversary, actually,
Okay.
next year.
Okay.
But, obviously the planning and the preparation starts from now.
For sure.
So, yes, basically, Zaar is Malta's only reward-based crowdfunding platform. And it was started in 2015. I think, actually, if I had to be completely honest, we probably went live in 2016,
Okay.
actually. So maybe
But it was there.
we can stretch the anniversary even to the following year. But yes, we've obviously been around for a while. And I think, quite a few people now are aware of Zaar. And I think it's quite special to have a crowdfunding platform that is local. Because obviously the projects and the campaigns that we have on the platform tend to obviously be mostly local, focused towards the local community and sort of, the people who live in Malta. So the fact that the platform itself is local, we obviously have a better understanding
For sure.
of, the Maltese community and sort of what we have to offer.
For sure. And what about the name? We spoke a little bit before the shoot, and it fascinated me how you came about the name and how it's actually written as well, which is very interesting.
Yes. So Zaar is written Zaar. It's a bit of a typo, I suppose, but intentionally
Yes.
done.
Pun intended.
Pun intended, exactly. So it is, as we know, Zaar, Maltese means small. And it aligns itself very nicely with crowdfunding, because crowdfunding, the scope is to get small donations from many people. So Zaar or Zaar, but obviously we wanted to, jazz it up a bit.
Yes. I think you did. I think you mission accomplished there.
Yes, I think so. Then it's short, it's memorable, but yes, there is a little story behind it. And in fact, that's it. When it comes to crowdfunding, even as the name itself suggests, it's funding from the crowd.
Yeah.
Now you might have people who will give larger amounts of money, but the industry sort of tends to gravitate towards the smaller amounts, obviously from many people.
Who can make use of crowdfunding? Who's it for?
Really, it's for pretty much anybody who has a project, that they need money for. Now, obviously, the project can be pretty much anything that isn't illegal or immoral or unethical.
Okay.
Those are sort of the boundaries I think that we draw, and I think that most platforms would draw. From sort of a personal sense, from a Zaar perspective, we also have, for example, a no politics policy.
Okay.
So we don't fund campaigns that deal with politics. But otherwise, I mean, sort of pretty much anything else. So I think, that's a very, very large and wide spectrum you can crowdfund for. In fact, Zaar is based on 4 pillars. And the reason we've done that, we've sort of established these 4 pillars, is to give structure so that people can know where their project might fit in. In reality, the pillars are arbitrary. But when people come to sort of think about crowdfunding as a way to raise money, it obviously helps to give them structure.
Yeah.
So in fact, the 4 pillars are business, and that very much is targeted towards entrepreneurs, SMEs, freelancers, startups. Then we have the community sector, and that is obviously based on philanthropic organizations, NGOs, voluntary organizations, literally donations. Then we've got the culture pillar, and that is for people involved like in the arts, in theatre, people who might want to publish a book or launch a CD. I think CDs nowadays are a bit passé. But yes, perhaps they want to launch a single, on whatever platform they choose.
Spotify,
on Spotify,
yes,
exactly. And then the 4th pillar is research.
Okay.
So research is obviously research and education,
All right.
targeting anyone, for example, in academia,
right.
students, anybody who basically is involved in a research project. But it could be at any level, so it could be literally somebody who's doing their PhD, but also somebody who is perhaps in a very high level, research project, research study.
Okay.
So, the question, yes, it's very common who is crowdfunding for, and, we kind of say it's for everybody, which is obviously rather generic.
Yeah.
But in reality, it really is for anyone who has a passion project that they need to raise funds for, and that they obviously feel the public would be interested in as well, because obviously then that is important.
Definitely. And I'm quite sure that it's still perhaps can be difficult for someone to raise money, especially I'm not sure does it get better with experience? I mean, if you've done crowdfunding for a while, does it get better by experience?
I would say yes. I would think that it does get better with experience. And in fact, one thing I tell people is crowdfunding isn't a one-time thing. It doesn't mean that if you've done it once, that's it, you can't do it again.
Yeah.
And some people, for example, use crowdfunding as a pilot project. So they use it to test the waters, to test the service that they're offering, as in they're raising money for, perhaps the product. And perhaps, yes, the first campaign, they might keep it small, see, what the crowd thinks. But yes, we do have people who do come back, and, you do see, especially if you take into account certain larger platforms that obviously have been around for a longer time and perhaps have larger economies of scale, you tend to notice that, especially with products, there are people who'll go, for example, with version 3 of their product.
Okay.
So they've done version 1, and now they're on version 3. So yes, crowdfunding can definitely be used in, more than once. No, it's not easy. It does require a lot of work. And this is something I tell anybody who, shows interest, because I have an online call with everybody who basically shows interest in running a campaign. Obviously, I need to give them the information about Zaar and what it entails and sort of what they need to think about before running the campaign. And I always tell them, you need to put in a lot of effort here in terms of the promotion, in terms of the marketing. We obviously offer marketing as part of the Zaar package.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I would say about 90% of the promotion and marketing needs to come from the project owner. And the reason for this is that they are the ones with the passion behind the project. They are the ones who can really
Sell
sell
the
it.
idea.
Yes, and everybody obviously has their own network, so if your network is very niche, then you are likely to know the people who are probably going to back you.
Yeah.
We have obviously our database of people, but it's generic, because obviously we have a lot of campaigns that span the different
Yes.
pillars. So not each campaign is going to be relevant to obviously everybody on our database. So it's really, really important that basically the project owner does a lot of, I would say, pre-campaign work to identify their target market, their audience, understand who their audience is going to be, and perhaps even look into perhaps diverse audiences, So obviously you've got your immediate network that would include your family, your friends, your colleagues. But then you want to also expand further. So perhaps you might want to go online and find, for example, niche groups, let's say LinkedIn groups or, other fora where, perhaps there are people who really align themselves to what your project is all about. And that obviously needs to be done before the campaign launches.
Yes.
Because a campaign is rather short. So the work needs to be done beforehand. So then once the campaign goes live, the marketing goes out with impact.
Yes.
And in fact, another sort of trick or tip is to even have a teaser campaign.
Okay.
And these are all sort of things that can be done. And the nice thing about crowdfunding is that it leaves you very open to do your own thing, really. It's in the sense that we obviously provide the platform, but it's up to the person to choose the content that they want to upload, the video, the photos, the information. If people want to use infographics, they can. If people want to use photos, they can. If it's, some, animated whiteboard animations, it's fine.
It can be done.
It can be done, absolutely. So, again, it's all about basically what the project entails and who it's talking to.
Okay.
So if it's, for example, if it's a research project on perhaps a very serious matter, you're not going to use cartoons.
For sure.
You're probably going to use some sourced facts, perhaps from medical journals, if it has to do with science or medicine. And you're going to obviously offer information that is very factual.
Yes.
And
how the project will impact other people's lives.
Exactly. Whereas if it's a theatre project, then obviously your tone of voice is going to be very different, and you're probably going to put up photos and maybe backstage photos.
It's like starting a business in a way for a short while. So
Yes.
But you get a lot out of it as well, because if you don't have your target audience dialed in, if you don't, you really your fundamentals are a bit shaky here, you can get these dialed in, because it's a huge lesson, because otherwise you won't get the necessary funds. So it's a good exercise, but it feels like starting a business from scratch and then liquidating it after 4 to 6 weeks in a way.
Yes, no, it's true, and it is. It's a good analogy, and you're very right about sort of the other benefits that you get from a crowdfunding campaign, because the ultimate goal is to obviously get the funds. You don't start a crowdfunding campaign unless you actually need the money. But there are ancillary benefits to it as well. And as you said, for example, one thing is finding the crowd, because yes, you would obviously always have your initial network.
Yeah.
But you want to obviously find more people. And the nice thing with a crowdfunding campaign is that every person who backs you, you're going to have their details. You're going to have their name, their surname, and their email address.
Okay.
Obviously, it's only available to the project owner,
Fair
for
enough.
the PR reasons and all that.
Yes.
But it is obviously a legitimate way of getting people's information
Yes.
and yes, you literally have your database right there.
Yeah.
And very often this is a database of either first movers. It's definitely a targeted database because people wouldn't back you if they weren't interested in the project
Definitely.
and keen to support the project. So you know that the information of the people there is obviously worthy information. And I mean, I think nowadays data is currency. We're all very aware of the data that we're giving out every time we enter a website, and we have to accept all, or
Yes.
and that's all data, which is so important nowadays. So that is, I think, definitely one of the top ancillary benefits that you get from crowdfunding, in addition, obviously, to the funds.
Yeah.
Another one is also market validation.
Yeah.
Because obviously not all crowdfunding projects are successful.
Yes.
But either way, you're going to get some kind of feedback. If it's successful, great. You know that your project is successful and it's good and people are interested in it. So that
Definitely.
is positive market validation. But even if it isn't successful, it doesn't mean that it's failed, because there are still things you can do to understand why it was unsuccessful. First of all, you see obviously by how much you didn't reach your target, because it could be a small amount, and perhaps it's just that the timing was off. If it's a large amount, then is it the seasonality? Was your tone of voice wrong in the content? Did you perhaps not give enough information for people to understand what the project is about and why they should support you?
Yeah.
Did you not market it or promote it? That is typically the number one reason. People tend to sort of think, oh, okay, it's on the platform, it will run itself.
Unfortunately, it doesn't.
Does not work that way, no. And no, that this is literally why I tell people you need to run your campaign at a time when you have the time for it. I'll tell people, if you're accountants, don't run a campaign during VAT season, because you don't have time for it.
No, definitely not.
So there needs to obviously be planning involved. But yeah, even if the campaign is unsuccessful, but perhaps you got a handful of backers, you still have their data, you still have their information.
Yes.
So you can reach out to them. You're not going to have their funds, because unsuccessful campaigns get refunded. The backers basically get their money back. But you will still have access to their details. So you can still reach out to them on an individual level, and ask, first of all, obviously you thank them for backing you.
For sure.
But then you can ask them, what was it that led you to support me? Can you give me some more information? And then you can tell them, for example, listen, unfortunately, my campaign wasn't successful. However, can I still keep in contact with you?
Yeah.
So there are always elements to keep it positive. There's always a silver lining to any crowdfunding campaign. I don't think there's a crowdfunding campaign that will leave you with nothing.
I don't think so. I mean,
very rare to be literally left with nothing.
At least with a contact,
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
or at least with information. So it's the journey that one goes through when, because you're challenging yourself. You're challenging yourself to look at the same thing from a different point of view.
Yes.
So how can I sell it? What are the people that I'm trying to reach? How can I market it better? So these are all things that will push you, or should push you, to at least do some change in whatever you're doing. So I think you'll gain something for sure out of it.
Yes, that's it. No, I think, as you said, you're going to gain insight, and perhaps a better understanding of how people are viewing your product or your service or your project, whatever it is, because obviously we always think that our project is amazing.
In our heads it is.
Yes, and it should be that way. Otherwise, I don't think anybody wants to launch a substandard project. But, apart from you and your dog thinking it's amazing, you also need the crowd to have that same viewpoint. So yes, it will give you insight into sort of what the crowd thinks. And you will also get, to whatever degree, you're going to get promotion for your campaign, and you're going to get some kind of marketing for your
Yes,
campaign.
yes.
Because ultimately, this is going to be on a online platform, meaning there are no geographical boundaries. I would say nowadays, even language issues aren't a problem because, okay, the site is in English, but I
Yes.
mean, nowadays,
Most things are in English.
Yes. And then now there are all these, softwares that will translate
Definitely,
sites for you.
So
So,
pretty easy.
Even language isn't an issue now. So you've got sort of that platform that you can always use.
Step into, yes, definitely.
And then another thing that we offer as Zaar, as part of the Zaar package, is for most campaigns where we can, we also offer a press release, which is basically, it's written by a media agency,
Okay.
and that goes out to the local media, which has a lot of clout, and it's very powerful. In Malta, we still follow the media, I think,
Yes.
quite religiously, and people sort of obviously still use newspapers or the online platforms,
Yes,
obviously follow what's going on. And I do notice once a press release has gone out, very often the pledges start coming in.
increasing.
Yes, I get the notifications for each
You tap
pledge.
into sort of like a subsidiary audience to some extent as well.
Absolutely,
Because
yes.
there are people who watch or follow media and there are people who don't.
Yes.
So you tap into a different angle. Perhaps it is the same audience, but it depends on in which funnel they consume it. The media through.
Exactly. And then obviously you have more shareability there as
Definitely.
well, because sort of you might have prepared artwork for socials,
Yes.
But sometimes just a link which, you can WhatsApp to a group of people.
It's easier.
It's
I mean,
easy.
you have to make it easy for people to support you with a click of a button.
Exactly.
So this, like myself, I'm trying to get a new guest, for example. I'm trying to make it as easy as possible. So now I'm using Calendly, which hopefully it makes it super easy for someone to pick a date and time that suits them best.
Yes.
Other than going back and forth trying to find a date and time. You have to remove the obstacles.
That's it.
Removing the obstacles for people to find you.
That's it.
And sometimes it's harder than it seems. It should be easy. It should be easy,
Yes.
but it's not for some fun reason.
I find that sometimes when you're involved in something, it becomes second nature to you.
Yeah.
So sometimes you need to kind of remove yourself and see what you're working on from the eyes of a third party.
Yes.
And things that are obvious to you might not be obvious to them.
Definitely.
So even when it comes to, for example, a crowdfunding campaign, I tell people, you need to almost spoon feed, with your information and your video or your photos. You don't need to be brief. You've got a full page available to you, use it. It really
Definitely.
explain to people what the project is about, how it's going to benefit you, how it's going to benefit the community, how it's going to benefit your backers, what it means to you as well. Why should they back you? And yes, sort of you need to be vulnerable and you need to kind of pour your heart out a bit,
Yes.
I mean, not in a soppy way,
Yes,
but
yes.
you need to make people understand why this is so important to you, because once you tap into people's emotions,
Yes.
and then, this is like where the storytelling comes in.
Yes.
I think it's become quite a buzzword at the moment in marketing.
It's gaining some traction.
It is, but it's with reason, because it is so true. I mean, as people, we like hearing stories because we can identify
Yes.
with them, or if we can't identify with them, we can somehow understand them because there's a personal element to
Yes,
it.
definitely.
It's like I always say, when you're posting online, if you can post photos with people, especially ideally not stock images, but
Yes.
people that we can relate to, people like seeing people,
Yeah.
unless it's animated, and then you've got that fun element. But
Depends on the audience you want to reach.
Yes.
Again, and it depends on what message you want to convey.
absolutely.
I think that makes a huge difference.
Yes.
You're seeing the people behind the screen. I mean, it's like when you meet someone, you put a face to a name.
Yes.
Corresponding by email or meeting online is one thing, but actually sitting down and having a conversation over coffee or anything, it's a different kind of feeling to it.
It is.
So I think there's power to that.
Yes,
On
definitely.
a more personal note, perhaps, you've been mentioning crowdfunding and how one can make use of it. And I left you the mic so that we can educate people on this. What is crowdfunding to you? What is Zaar to you? How does it align with your purpose and values?
Okay. Well, I joined Zaar in 2021.
Okay.
So yes, during the pandemic. What I love about Zaar and about crowdfunding, actually, let me backtrack even further. My first foray into crowdfunding happened in 2012. I was a big fan of Twitter when it was still Twitter, and I used to follow an account called Mrs. Stephen Fry, which was a parody of Stephen Fry's wife.
Okay.
And it was a really fun, humorous account. And basically, the person behind it, I'm not actually sure if it was Stephen Fry or not. I had never actually looked into it.
All right.
But they wanted to publish a book. It was called Mrs. Fry's Diary, A Guide to a Successful Marriage. And I thought, this is fun. And I love reading, so I said, I want to own this book. And basically, the person was crowdfunding through a platform that still exists and focuses solely on publishing books.
Okay.
It's a UK platform. So I basically followed a link, saw this crowdfunding page. I selected the reward that I wanted, and I effectively bought the book. So it was a pre-sales tool to buy the
Okay.
book. And my reward is that my name appears in a list at the back of the book as one of the people who has backed
All right.
the project. So that was sort of my actual first foray into crowdfunding as a backer. And this was, as I said, back in 2012. So in fact, the book arrived. It's there in my bookshelf. It's a very funny book, and it's a nice thing to
Yes.
have, especially just seeing your name there. I mean, it's a bit of an ego boost, I
Yes,
suppose.
yes, I'm
Only
there.
I know I'm there,
Yeah.
obviously,
But
along with hundreds of
in your
other
head.
people. But yes, exactly. So then, yes, obviously, years passed. And then, yes, I joined Zaar in 2021. And obviously learned a lot more about crowdfunding and what it entails and how it helps people, not just obviously the project owner, but also the community and the different communities, because you've obviously got different cohorts. As I said, you've got your business cohort, you've got your creative cohort, the research, the academic one. Obviously, you've got your philanthropic NGOs, people who donate to a crowdfunding campaign purely out of the good of their heart because they believe in a cause, And in my case, when I pledged towards this book, it's because I wanted to own the book. In fact, we also make a difference in the terminology we use. Mm-hmm. So when you have a reward, it's a pledge. And when you don't have a reward, it's a donation. Because a donation literally implies that you're giving money, but you're not going to get anything in return.
Okay.
So yeah, basically, I mean, now I've been, 4 years? 4 years coming up, something like that.
Oh,
3 years. 3 years, yes.
2021, right? So
Exactly,
3 years.
so 3 years. And I just love the fact that I've met, sometimes only online, but I still feel like I know these
Yes.
people. I've met so many people who have shared their passion projects with me and obviously with Zaar and with, everybody who has backed them. And I feel that we've helped. We've sort of provided the platform for their projects to become a reality. And in the meantime, I actually also backed another project, again international, but this was a game on words. So
Here comes the word nerd.
here comes the word nerd. Yes, this was. I have the game. It's really sad. I haven't actually played it yet, but I just love the project so much because basically it's a game on etymology.
Etymology.
Etymology is basically the
Remind me.
study of words and where words stem from.
Okay. Yes.
So yes, big word nerd. But again, it was a wonderful campaign, really well run, was completely international. I mean, the person behind it, I believe it was Brothers, if I'm not mistaken, was sending these games. They're based in the States, but they send the games to Asia, to Australia, to Malta.
All right.
So it went completely international, and he ran a very, very good campaign in terms of keeping backers updated, throughout the process. If, for example, there was one point where he was having issues with the publishers,
Okay.
because obviously the game was, published as in on a board and all that, and
right.
it's with cards. So he kept the backers updated, saying, "Listen, your game is delayed because there are issues with the publishers." These things happen. It's not a problem in the sense that, yes, it's a problem, but as long as people are kept updated, then most people are quite forgiving, I suppose. When they know that sort of crowdfunding isn't just going into a shop, you're giving the money and you're getting the product.
Yes.
There is a bit of a retail transaction, but it's a different medium.
The enjoyment stems from supporting the individual and from being part of the journey and the story.
Absolutely, exactly. You're very aptly put. It is a journey. It is a journey. Yes.
And from what the story that you've shared, you've been storytelling.
Yes.
From the story that you shared, I think I'm being reminded of the concept that we people like to be part of something which is bigger than us.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that there's actually your name and something which is bigger than you, which is a book, and there's a sort of like a community element to it, and that we're part of someone as a journey, we're feeling useful.
Yes.
And I think it's nice to feel useful to someone. And I think crowdfunding gives that opportunity. The tool that we're using to be useful is money, because money is a tool that can help us achieve things. Sometimes a transaction is all it's needed, even if it's €10, for example. It's not much, but when you accumulate it, it becomes a lot.
Of
So if you
course.
multiply it by 100, it becomes a lot.
Absolutely.
This reminds me of the concept. Have you ever heard about emergence?
No, I haven't.
Emergence, I got to know a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
Emergence it happens in nature. It's when little things make a huge impact. So it's like a colony of ants. One ant isn't significant,
No.
but a colony is very powerful.
Yes, absolutely.
Or like cells. One cell is insignificant, but a billion cells make a human body.
Of course.
So this is the concept of emergence as well, coming from crowdfunding.
Yes.
From a single euro, if you multiply it by 1 million, you get 1 million euros.
Of course. Yes, that would be nice.
It's as simple as that. When you look at
Yes.
it, it's silly in a way because it's a silly sum, but it's true. It's as simple as that, but as complex as it gets.
Yes, no, and in fact, there are different ways in which you can approach crowdfunding, and I think it depends a lot on sort of what your business model is to a certain extent, and also where you are in the process of. I would say this is more for business campaigns. So if you've got a business campaign, if you're at the very beginning of your business where you're still sort of doing research into who your audience is and you're sort of still trying to get that market validation, then you're going to want as many people as possible to obviously back you.
Yeah.
So you might be happy with smaller amounts, but from many people, because as I said earlier, you're going to have the added benefits, the data, the
Yes.
market validation, basically more eyes seeing your project and more people knowing about you.
Yeah.
If perhaps you're at a later stage of your business journey, you might be happy with fewer people pledging, but pledging larger amounts.
Okay.
So if, I don't know, you need €500, you might be happy enough with 5 people pledging €100
Yeah.
each, because it's not about, you don't need the data.
Yes.
All you need is that €500.
Yes.
So perhaps it might even be easier to find 5 people who are willing to pledge €100
Right.
because they believe and support your project, also because you're further along in your business journey. So you've probably already gained a bit of traction, even in terms of sort of legitimacy and validity. So people might already know who you are. So they're kind of more willing also to trust you.
Yes.
So there are different ways of going about it, of basically gaining this €500. And I think a lot of it depends, as I said, on where you are in your journey. Obviously, at the end of the day, it depends what it is you want to achieve. Do you want the holistic entire package, or do you just, at this point, want the money?
All right.
And then a lot of it also depends on, because as we mentioned before, this is reward-based crowdfunding. And the rewards that you offer, obviously,
Are of value to people. as
are
well.
of value, and they tally a lot with what
What you're
people
trying
are
to do.
going to pledge. I saw a campaign recently on Kickstarter, and I can mention Kickstarter because they're huge.
Yes.
And I always tell some people sort of are a bit unsure about what crowdfunding
Yeah.
is. And I tell them, do you know Kickstarter? They go, yes.
Yes. And
And I say, okay, Zaar has the exact same business model as Kickstarter. Exactly the same. Just the economies of scale are
Yes.
different. Only thing. Otherwise, we operate in exactly the same way. Probably with Zaar, you get a bit more hand-holding than
most
you would
probably,
with
yes, because it's
Kickstarter.
smaller.
But yes, I saw a campaign recently, which was basically, it was a pre-sales campaign. I think they were on version 2 of this very fancy orange juicer
Okay.
or citrus juicer anyway.
Okay.
And it was really fancy, and kind of I can't remember exactly what it did. Obviously, your output was juice, but it offered something else that was apparently worth $250. And I thought $250 is a bit much for a juicer that I have to clean anyway. Perhaps if it was self-cleaning.
Yes.
But I think it was something like 300 odd people didn't think that $250 was too much, because they not only reached their goal, but surpassed it by quite a lot. So sometimes it's also about knowing your product well enough, knowing your audience well
Knowing
enough.
your audience is very important. here,
And
because-
again, it's believing in what you're offering. So I tell
Definitely.
people, with your rewards, if you're at a stage where a coffee cup makes sense for it to be a reward, then that's fine.
Yes.
But if you're at a stage where you can be really bold and where you can kind of disrupt the market, another buzzword, but again, a true one, then go for it. I tell people, if you can offer something free, go for it. Because people like freebies.
Definitely.
And, you're really going to probably, obviously it's going to be free to a certain extent, because people are still going to pay for it.
Yes, yes.
But, if you can sort of say you're going to have, I don't know, free access to our service for a year, that's a pretty bold reward, to offer. But you're probably going to get in people who really need your service.
The word free is a magic word.
Yes,
So it attracts people.
And, there's obviously, it's not going to be €10, get a free service for a year.
Definitely. It needs to be
the amount
balanced.
exactly would compensate for it. But again, the people who want your free service for a year would be willing to pay that amount.
Most definitely.
And then that is where you're probably going to get perhaps fewer people, but you're going to arrive to your goals quicker. And you're going to have people who are really, really targeted.
Yes.
So there are really so many ways to go about it. And I tell people, I said, you have to ideally be creative. And I say, if you can have a team of people where you can brainstorm the rewards that you offer, spend time brainstorming. The rewards should be an integral part of your campaign.
There's a lot of strategizing into it. So if you have a good plan, and if you have a good strategy and a good plan, it should be successful on its own. So if you do the homework really, really well,
that's it.
Once it's launched, that's why earlier I think you said that once it's launched, it makes an impact because you've studied, you did your homework well. So once it's out there, I think the money or the funds that you gain become a byproduct.
Yes,
in a way,
yes, to a certain extent.
You would have positioned yourself in a way that with the amount of homework that you've done, the success of the campaign is also almost guaranteed.
Yes. No, planning is key. It really is key. And that's why I tell people it can't be an overnight thing.
Definitely.
You think about it, plan it, draw out your timeline as well, and do your homework ultimately. Do your homework because, if you study, you get good grades.
Yeah. So hopefully, yes.
Same thing. Do your homework, do your studying, and hopefully you'll have a successful campaign.
Yes.
We can never guarantee success. And I always tell people, we can't guarantee success. And if any platform tells you that, they're going to
get... There are so many variables, I think.
Yes. But obviously, the better the planning, I mean, you've obviously got a better chance of success.
A question comes to mind, Giselle. I mean, in the past 3 years or so, what have you discovered about yourself thanks to Zaar? Very valuable lessons here, so I'm sure that there's something in there.
I think, so with crowdfunding, there are four main types of crowdfunding. The two that Zaar offers, which is reward-based and donation-based. And then there are another two, which are equity and lending. Then there are other smaller ones, but these are the four main ones. And a lot of people, when they hear crowdfunding, they primarily think equity. A lot of people also think that Kickstarter deals in equity because of the amounts that it raises, because it tends to raise rather large amounts. But it doesn't. Kickstarter is purely reward-based.
Okay.
Basically, equity and lending is when investors get involved. So it is literally an investment. It's a financial transaction, but you're literally moving into the field of financial services.
Okay.
So, you've got people who become part of your project. Whereas with reward-based crowdfunding, the transaction, or rather the relationship, stops once the transaction is done. So people support your project, yes, obviously with their money, but then they don't have a say in how you...
There's no shareholding.
No, exactly. There's no shareholding. And to go back to the question, I realized that equity is not really something that I value too much. I much prefer the community aspect that reward-based crowdfunding deals in. And I think it's because very often we're dealing with individuals and with entrepreneurs and with startups and with people who are at a point in their journey where they really are looking for community, and they're looking, they're looking for funds, but they're not just going to a bank or going to an equity and, looking for investors for the big amounts. They're literally looking towards people like them, towards their peers, as it were. And I think there's a lot of value in that, a bit of an emotional value as well, you know, because you see that these people are the ones who very often work so hard at the campaign because they know that, you know, they need to kind of put in that bit more effort, you know, because they're not going to be on Forbes anytime soon, you know. They're not going to be on, I don't know, entrepreneur.com, you know, maybe in the future, but they're still at the initial stage of their journey. So I think the fact that I get to help with that, it's important to me, and I feel quite privileged, you know, to be part of that journey. I mean, even if it's not a business, even if it's sort of a theatre project, sometimes even more when it's not a business project, because very often sort of people in the arts are the ones who really know what it's like to, you know, put in the long hours and, you know, the rehearsals and all that. So when you can sort of help these projects see the light of day, there's something very satisfying about it.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, as I made note before, I mean, it's like starting up a secondary company or something that you already have. So that must be extra hard. And you're at a point where you have to work so hard to make your business successful. But you're at a point as well that you need some extra funds or a bigger capital to go to the next level. Yes. And you know that unless you raise that capital, it's very difficult for you to go into the next level. It can be a prototype that you're working on. You need the technology, you need the people. Because ultimately, if you're getting support from professionals, for example, not everyone is willing to do that voluntarily.
Yes.
Yeah, you might need to pay or pay for the equipment. So you're at a point in your journey where it's a make or break kind of situation. So at the same time, you're trying to build your brand, build the product, build the business, build the connections. At the same time, you're trying to build funds. So,
exactly.
But it's ironic in a way. I'm finding this a little bit not contradicting, but a little bit ironic as well, in the sense that in order to do the crowdfunding event, you sort of have to ditch whatever you're doing, focus on that, and get the lessons from the crowdfunding initiative, and then go back to the drawing board.
In a way,
it's like you have to pinch yourself in a way.
Yes, you need to kind of see it as a project within a project, I suppose. But yes, it's, again, I think it very much depends on where you are in the journey and how you're going to use crowdfunding. Because, for example, some people might use it as a pilot project, you know, again, to get the market validation, see what the crowd thinks about the product or their service. Whereas some people might use it as a pre-sales tool. So, for example, yes, you might already have the product, you know, but you're not a wholesaler. You're not going to go to retail stores and say, will you stock this for me? You're kind of doing it by yourself in a way, and you're using a crowdfunding platform as your medium. Again, very often this is done typically by entrepreneurs, you know, or startups, very much used, for example, in the tech industry, or as I mentioned before, you know, sort of juicers that cost $250 and it's fine. You know, so there are different ways on how you can use crowdfunding. So again, I think it very much depends on what your aim is. And even if, for example, you're using it, as I said, for example, for a culture project, some, you know, creative project, typically that is, in a way, a pre-sales tool, because very often you're raising the funds in order to put on a show, put on a concert. So and typically the rewards are tickets to the show. So it's like, you know, you're basically selling the tickets beforehand. Very often, but this happens long before the show is happening. And then this is where I tell people, try and be really bold with the rewards. Don't just offer tickets, but can you invite people to a launch party? Can you literally have them on stage? Can they perhaps be part of the show? Something a bit out there. And again, we're not saying that 100 people are going to benefit, because then there's also the really, I would say, nice element of having exclusive rewards. So you can say, you can be part of the show, only available for 2 people.
Okay.
So only 2 people. Yes, obviously they're going to pay a higher amount.
But yes,
there's
exclusivity makes it enticing.
Exactly, So imagine, I don't know, you're a band, and literally have 2 people who get to be on stage with you, literally not just witnessing the show from the crowd, but either from the side or, I don't know, this is sort of just coming to mind now, but you might set up some kind of really cool seating area for them. You mention them,
the VIP kind of feeling.
Exactly, or if you're doing a theatre project or perhaps a film, they actually get a walk-on role, I don't want to give them a line, it depends, and then obviously it's up to the person. But still, it's like I get to actually walk on stage. For some people, they might never have the opportunity to do that.
For sure.
So when people are really bold with their rewards, they can really sort of make a very, very successful campaign and have people even talk about it, more than sort of the regular coffee mug reward, as we tend to call it. So I think it's just where you are basically in the line of your journey. And actually, just another little anecdote and storytelling. So do you know the 80s band Marillion?
No.
Okay. I guess I'm showing my age. They're very good. You should listen to them.
What genre?
It's like soft rock.
All right.
They crowdfunded.
Okay.
They crowdfunded a concert. So they were, I think, if I'm not mistaken, if I have my facts right, they were already kind of declining because, they were like really, really popular in the 70s and 80s. But basically, they told their fan base, if you buy your tickets beforehand, then we will do the concert.
Okay.
But they needed to obviously sell a certain amount of tickets. And it was hugely popular, and the fans, absolutely gathered around. They bought the tickets, and there was this concert. I mean, we still obviously buy tickets before a show, but a show is unlikely to be cancelled because there aren't enough tickets sold. Typically, the show will run at a loss, So this is why the Marillion crowdfunding campaign is different.
All right.
They made sure that they sold enough tickets for the show to happen. If they didn't reach their goal, the show was not going to happen. So then obviously the fans who really wanted the show to happen obviously had that sort of pressure on them, to
either make it work.
Exactly. or it's not going to happen. Exactly. I mean, the term crowdfunding, word nerd again, was actually coined in the 90s.
All right.
But crowdfunding as a concept, as in sort of raising funds from the crowd, is a very, very old concept. Dates back to something like the 1700s.
It's like when Patreons, hence the name Patreon, comes out, when you have people supporting artists, for example. I think it stems from there, where you have a local artist, or someone who works in marble or something, that you want to support them and you make pledges to them. So you're a Patreon.
Exactly. It's all part of the same sort of, under the same umbrella. I mean, even, for example, the base that the Statue of Liberty stands on was crowdfunded.
Interesting.
So there are a lot of these sort of little stories and anecdotes. Again, at that time, the term crowdfunding didn't exist.
Definitely, but the concept existed.
The concept existed.
All right.
You see?
Interesting. Something
yeah.
interesting about storytelling as well. Hopefully, you have a nice story about it as well. You're the first guest who brought a notebook
Okay.
on any podcast. So I'm not sure about the number that this of the recording, but you're the first guest who brought in a notebook.
Okay.
What's the story behind note taking?
Yes, I think I'm still a bit old school in terms of pen and paper.
I think that they still have a magic around them. So pen and paper, I think that's.
Yes. I also find it very practical because sometimes by the time you open either your phone or your tablet and you find the app that you need, and then you start typing, and probably there's a few typos, and then autocorrect, decides to change some word for you, and by the time I've already written what I needed to jot down. Yes, no, I do tend to carry a notebook, and I probably have about another 3 pens in my bag at the moment. I'm always the one who's got pens with me. I just find notes very useful. I'm very much a list person. I've always got to-do lists.
Okay.
Sometimes my to-do lists have to-do lists.
Happens
and then
to
I
everyone.
change where I'm writing. So if it's a notebook would sort of have clearer, perhaps more structured notes. But if it's just a to-do list, it's probably on a scrap piece of paper that then I'm going to throw away.
Okay.
So even my notes are structured.
What does it say about you? What does this way of doing things say about you?
I do consider myself to be quite an organized person. I always believe, and I think this came from my mother, everything has a place, and there's a place for everything.
Okay.
And it is very true. And in a way, I think if you structure the way you do things, whatever your system may be, even if it's disorganized but organized for you, because I think, people obviously have to find their own way of doing things. I think it just allows for a clearer mindset and sort of, I just think organization is it's just a nice way to be organized and to kind of have things in place. And I know if I need a pair of scissors, I know that I can either go to the kitchen because I have my kitchen scissors there, or I can go to the desk because I have my stationery scissors there. So everything has a place, and there's a place for everything. And I think it just allows, for a more efficient way of doing things. Mm-hmm. I think I do also, in a bit of an ego way, I pride myself on efficiency. And I think also to tie it back to crowdfunding, it's why our campaigns perhaps appeal to me, because a campaign is short, it's efficient, it's concise.
Yes.
Exactly. You either make it work or it's gone.
Definitely.
One
thing that I hate, I'm not sure about you, is that the constant looking up of things. Go grab a scissor, for example, and you spend 10 minutes looking for a scissors. I hate that. So I'm organized in my own way. I need to find things as fast as I can, so that I can be efficient as well. So I resonate with that. Just the loitering around of looking for things.
Yes.
Mindlessly looking for things is
yeah, no, it is. It's a waste of time, and it's very frustrating.
It is.
I had bought a tripod for my phone, and I put it somewhere safe, and I haven't found it, which is it's very irritating because I needed it last week. And yes, so then sometimes...
Well, I have plenty of tripods here, so in case you're short...
Over-organization can, I suppose, have its downside as well.
It can.
But on the whole, I like to have my ducks in a row, as they say.
Definitely. You said before I asked the final question through the fishbowl, I'm going to flip the mic around, and okay. I would like to ask you whether you have a question for me as the podcast host.
I'm going to ask you a similar question to what you asked me. Okay. What does this podcast give you on a personal level? What makes it special for you?
Thank you for the question. What makes it special? I mean, I'm asked this question, but you framed it in a different way, something I appreciate. I think it gives me something to think about. Something to think about. I enjoy having conversations with people, and it gives me an experience, and hopefully this gives an experience to the guest. So it is special for me because I can express my creativity through communication.
Okay.
So I'm trying to challenge my own thoughts in ways behind the mic, behind the camera, and I'm trying to do it with each with each and every podcast episode. And I get a lot out of each and every conversation. So that's special to me. And I'm trying out a new concept, which is having a live audience with us. And I think that gives a different experience even to the listener. So we're having this conversation before.
Yes.
When you listen to podcasts, you have a certain type of experience. When you watch a podcast on YouTube or on Spotify, you have a different type of experience. But when you're actually listening to something live happening and you're there in person, it gives it something special. I mean, you can feel the room. You can feel the energy of the crowd. Mentioning crowdfunding, I'm trying to use the keywords here even for SEO purposes.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's something that you get a lot out of it. And having conversation, we've been podcasting for a year and a half now,
Okay.
or nearing 2 years. I feel that I grew a lot in my thought process, the way I view things, and it challenged me in ways that I would have never been challenged if I didn't enter this spectrum.
Excellent. No, I think yes, the live audience does give it a very nice twist because, for example, I obviously attend various events and seminars and whatnot, and I think when you're actually listening to somebody talking, it can spark ideas that perhaps wouldn't come if you're listening through a technical medium. You know, sometimes, as you said, when you're in the room, there's an energy. And again, this is where I typically have my notebook and I'll jot down an
Yes.
idea that would have sparked,
Yes.
you know, and I'll be like, you know, research whatever it is, for example, or, you know, look up a term or sort of learn about something. I mean, like recently I was seeing these animations and I thought those are really cool. I want to learn more about it.
Okay.
So, and yes, you know, that happened because
It's the community element to
It
it.
is.
That is also an objective of mine, to create a community, because I've said it in past podcasts, don't want to really repeat myself on it, but if someone is hearing this for the first time, I think there has been a lot about raising awareness in mental health, in the mental health spectrum. And I think now we're shifting to a era where we need to be a little bit more practical and we need to educate people on how to use our internal resources, and if we don't, how we can develop them in order to succeed in whatever we're doing. And success, it doesn't mean entrepreneurial, business, at work, career, but even having a family, having kids, the relationship with ourselves, how can we do it? So hopefully these conversations might spark someone, or we might say something that sparks something in someone that say, I can do that, or I for example, someone who might listen to this episode might say, I can do a crowdfunding event for my photography hobby, for example. You can do it. There is the
Absolutely.
availability.
Yes.
So having an audience, a crowd, a community of like-minded individual people who really want to help themselves grow through other people, because I think that we can only help ourselves so much. We reach a glass ceiling at some point in time. But if we surround ourselves with the right people, a support system, we can elevate ourselves to higher lengths. And I think I want to give that space.
Yes.
I want to give this space to people who want to develop themselves, to discover themselves, and we can create a community out of it.
Yes.
So I think that's something which is missing locally, or we have I'm not aware of. Let me say that. Let me say so. But to me, it feels that we're missing, and I think we should have this kind of space.
Yes, it's very true. And you're sort of providing the space and community, obviously, in a, I would say, more tangible setting.
Yes.
And I think on Zaar we provide it on an online setting. But yes, again, it's about creating community. And also, I mean, it's about having communities that can trust you, because, for example, in one thing that is super important for me as the person who runs Zaar is that our platform is transparent. You're accountable. It's legitimate. I mean, we're dealing with people's money here.
Yeah.
So we need to ensure that people know that it's trustworthy, that they're not just sending money to some random bank account and they don't actually know what's going to happen with it.
For sure.
So even you're creating a community of trust as well. And I just want to segue on from, you mentioned entrepreneurial and entrepreneurship. That is something that we tie in a lot with crowdfunding, also because Zaar is owned by a foundation that deals in entrepreneurship.
Okay.
And we actually see entrepreneurship as a mindset and not just about starting a business.
Okay.
So I always describe an entrepreneurial mindset as making the most of the resources that are available to you.
Yes.
Regardless of the sector that you're in.
Sometimes you'd be surprised with, I mean, again, I'm going to pitch in my idea here. Podcasting, the only thing that you need is a phone. Most of us have a smartphone at hand, and you can simply record using the already built-in app in your phone. Yes, you can have this equipment. It took me a year and a half to be here. But I started off, I'm still recording this with my phone.
Yes.
I'm considering doing a crowdfunding event to purchase a camera, proper
let's do
camera.
it.
So it's been on my mind for a while. But you can do it. It needs to be a little bit inefficient until it becomes efficient as well sometimes.
Yes.
So I think you have to make do with what you have. I think
Absolutely.
there's beauty in it as well, and I think it gives you a lot of perspective and a lot of appreciation of what you're doing and a good story as well.
Absolutely. And again, it just ties into what reward-based crowdfunding is all about. It's the story, it's appreciating what you have, and it's getting people involved.
Very good. Time for the question.
Time for the question.
Let me summon our beloved friend here. So I think it's better if you stand up for it because it's a bit high.
There we go.
All right. Very good.
Let's see. That's interesting. How do you maintain a positive mindset in challenging situations? Okay, this is a fantastic question, actually. I think in recent years, I very much operate in a mindset of the day will pass. Time passes.
Okay.
So there are very few things that can be so bad that it's, going to change your life. So I tend to operate on a mindset of how bad is it truly? In this case, okay, we're using the word challenging, which is the positive way of, saying bad in a way.
Yeah.
I think challenging situations are important in life because ultimately it's how you learn. You need setbacks in life because if everything is, going your way, sounds lovely, but it's obviously unrealistic.
Very unrealistic.
You're always going to have peaks and troughs in life, life is fluid, it's flexible, it fluctuates. See, word, not alliteration of F.
Yes. All right. I didn't pick that up.
I know, I do. It's all innate.
It will be a very poetic ending here.
So, again, a positive mindset. I think positive is subjective because I think it's very personal. I think success is something that's very personal in the sense that what someone might deem successful
Yeah.
might not be successful for
It's different
somebody
for each and
else.
every one of us.
As I said, for example, with even if a crowdfunding campaign is unsuccessful, I try and see the silver lining, basically. And again, I just think it will pass. It will pass. We'll do the best that we can. We'll make the most of what we can. If you can ideally have a plan B, always have a plan B.
Definitely.
But ultimately, I think there are very, very few situations that are really going to, knock you down to the point that you're really going to struggle to get up again. Or at least, because I'm saying that and I'm realizing it might sound a bit blasé, but I've been lucky enough, I would say, that any challenging situations that I've been in, I've managed to overcome. I think it's just, yes, a case of knowing that the sun is going to rise again tomorrow. And that might be a bit poetic and a bit...
We're still in theme here. It depends on the challenge, I think, because there are challenges which are more challenging than others.
Yes.
Not to put a bit of a gloom to the to the
A
situation.
downer.
But a friend of mine once told me, he's a lot older than me, he could be my father, he told me that be grateful in life because all life does in time is eat the things that you have.
Wow. Okay. Yes. I know what you mean. It does sound like a downer, but it is actually so true.
It's true.
I also very much believe in the privilege of growing old.
Yeah.
I lost both my parents when they were in their 60s. So there is such a privilege to growing old. And I think people need to appreciate it. And I think people need to do the most that they can to be in a situation where they can appreciate it and, obviously live in as healthy a way as possible to appreciate the fact that they have years ahead of them. I mean, obviously, circumstances happen, situations happen, but yes, there is also a privilege to growing old. So I think that is sort of the mindset that I have, that, just make the most out of life, out of the opportunities that it gives you. I think I'm quite lucky in a sense that I don't suffer from FOMO.
Okay.
I really don't.
Which is very important because
I think FOMO can be very deceptive in a way. It's fine to miss out. You don't need to attend everything. You don't need to be at every event, regardless of what it is. Sometimes it's good to just enjoy sort of missing out and enjoy being perhaps somewhere different or being alone, or, that you don't feel the pressure to kind of belong or accommodate others, or accommodate society, peer pressure.
yeah.
We're bombarded by so much information and activities and events. Sometimes people say, because nothing happens in Malta. If you go on Facebook events, there is something every single day. It might not apply to you,
Yes,
but there is always something to do.
There is always something. I think we are we're a civilization of
We don't know how to not be busy.
Yes, busy and alone at some
Yes.
in some cases, because we'll always, most of us at least, deserve an overarching statement, but most of us, at least Maltese people, like to be surrounded with people.
Yes.
If
yes.
we're not in that community feeling, and not the community feeling that we were discussing earlier on today.
No,
it's a different type of community.
Yes,
the close-knit kind of.
Yes.
We feel that we are alone, and we panic when we are alone. It's like when families used to travel abroad, and or parents who have children living abroad. It creates that sort of distance and
Yeah.
the sort of uneasy feeling to it. Because we're so tight-knit that it creates a separation anxiety to, again, use another buzzword.
Yes.
But it creates that kind of feeling. But I agree with your statement that there's nothing wrong with missing out on certain things, and we can't be everything, every time, and everywhere.
Exactly.
So, I mean, if you're not feeling like participating in a social gathering or of some sort, it's okay to take a bit of a step back and to listen to ourselves without feeling regret.
That's it. And it's about, again, going back to the question, the positive mindset. I think it's about how you, in a way, spin things, and that's how you view things, because a situation, if it's challenging, it's probably a learning opportunity, but it's only if you think about it that way.
Yeah.
So you're either going to use it as a learning opportunity, perhaps a platform, to something better, or you're going to allow it to destroy you, I mean, for example, I don't know, if you lose a job, it's obviously a very challenging situation,
Definitely.
especially if you have certain commitments or whatnot.
For sure.
But it could actually be an avenue to something so much better, So I think it's also about the way you view things and the way you sort of having a positive mindset, I think, is a mindset in itself.
Yes.
Yes. Trying, not being fake positive, but just understanding the bigger picture.
But you have to have that appreciation of the bigger picture and to be willing to see it as well. You can't miss the trees for the forest. How does the saying go?
The wood for the trees.
The wood for the trees.
Yes.
You can't miss that. Sometimes you have to look at both sides.
Yes, and you need to have challenging situations to appreciate them as well. Because as I said before, if everything was, flowing nice and easy, if you're a river and there's never a dam,
Yeah.
I mean, then you're just going to always end up, flowing without any obstacles. And with nothing to compare to, then obviously there's never going to be a learning opportunity there. So it's okay to have challenging situations and not always be positive about it, because then I think obviously we need to be realistic and we're human and everybody has their bad days, of course.
Yes.
And even as we said before, like, it's important to know how to be alone, but it's okay to feel lonely as well.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that every time you're alone it's going to be all zen and bliss.
Definitely
Yes,
not.
sometimes obviously we have our bad days and we feel sad and we feel down, and it's part of life. But I think the important thing is knowing that tomorrow is another day, basically.
Knowing when to rest a little bit as well, because as I said before, we can't be at 100% each day. And yes, having that, okay, today it will pass, I will try again tomorrow. There's nothing wrong with that. We're growing up in a society where doing that is wrong. And I don't think that it is wrong. I think it's wrong if it's repetitive. If we're
Yes.
Procrastinating, that
course.
that is wrong. So if you say, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it another day, and if you keep on procrastinating, that can be potentially harmful. But if you say, listen, I've tried my best today, it's good to call it a day and to try again tomorrow. Sometimes it happens even in training at the gym. Sometimes you have good days, sometimes you don't have good days, or go for a walk or for a run.
Of course.
It happens.
Yes.
You have to listen to your body and accept it and be respectful of your body and your mood in a way.
Yes. And I think I had seen a meme or some kind of image. I can't remember the exact words, but basically important things to note when you're feeling down and there are different situations: food, rest, shower, and fresh air.
Nice.
If you get those things, perhaps not all on the same day, but sometimes, yes, all you need is a nap. Sometimes what you need is a shower. A shower can do a world of good. Sometimes you just need comfort food.
Yes.
And it's fine to allow yourself, a nice shepherd's pie. And yes, fresh air. I think, where we're so sort of stuck between office and car and home, that sometimes we don't realize the benefits of just being outside, taking a moment and breathing in, ideally not pollution,
Ideally.
but, just...
As fresh as it can get.
As fresh as it can get, not sort of the four walls that we tend to surround ourselves by.
Definitely. Giselle, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you for the conversation and for the educational tips about crowdfunding. We had a conversation before, and I've learned already. I had learned a lot about crowdfunding, but today I think we took it to the next level, at least for me.
Yes.
So thank you for that. Thank you for reaching out in the first place. How was the experience from you?
Excellent. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. I love talking about crowdfunding. I think it's kind of obvious. I just love talking. But I do. I just think that crowdfunding can offer so much to so many people, that I'm really trying to get the word out there, to get as many people as possible to know about it and to make use of it and to just experience it for themselves, because I just think it's such a wonderful tool, that we have. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
You're welcome.
No, it was great. It was great.
Great. Thank you so much, Giselle.
Thanks, Daniel.